5 seconds, Morty. It'll be fine. Entire team band.
Alright, so this is a replay analysis video for a team I'm trying out as a coach. So I'm just going over the replays right now. I decided I might as well record it. I did watch a little bit of this replay already, but I didn't get too far into it. And I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible as well, because I want this to be watchable for either their players or the owner. In case they're interested, and I don't want to ramble on for too long, so I'm just gonna fast mode throughout this draft, because there's actually not too much I can say about the draft without knowing both these teams specifically. I can point out a couple of things. High ground will pick Ogre and a Batrider, I believe. That sets them up to have a really strong laning stage. These heroes are pretty scary once they get like their level 2. They have a bunch of slow, sticky napalm, and Firefly. They can burn people down. But Reverse Heaven reply with a pretty strong lane themselves here. AA Visage. Visage can be in core position or it can be support. In one of the side lanes, they can definitely make this work as like an aggro lane. Visage is really strong in tri lanes because of his second ability. And your commander, Puck, banned out. It seems like a lot of these are just comfort picks for Reverse Heaven. I did check their Dota buff a little bit. Their mid player is a Tinker player, and I think they like this type of playstyle. Puck and Legion also top offlaners right now, and Reverse Heaven have yet to pick their offlaner. This third pick, Faceless Void, is pretty obvious with the Batrider in the game. Void always has a good matchup against Batrider, but Team High Ground will respond to that with the Brewmaster, realizing that they don't want this unfavorable matchup, because the problem with the Batrider offlane, if they were to play it against the Faceless Void, is these three heroes would just dumpster him and he couldn't get a lot done. So instead they're going to put the Batrider in a roaming position, which will allow him to get more done on the map, instead of just trying to lane him against the Void, where he can just get zoned out even with the help from the Ogre, because this lane is very strong. AA, Visage, and Void as a tri-lane. So with the Void being picked up, this pretty much guarantees that the Void will be a core position, and they're going to pick a hero that can combo with him. There's multiple heroes that can fit here. They go with the Lina, which in my opinion she's kind of a weak hero. Other heroes that could have fulfilled this role are Invoker, but he's also relatively weak in the laning stage. And we'll see later on that since High Ground picks up a Viper here, Lina probably will end up being the better pickup. Invoker may be a bit too greedy, as the Viper would destroy the Invoker, and the problem is they don't have the last pick for their mid, so they have to pick it here, or they can save it for last, but they prefer to just pick it here, get the mid pick out, and then they could hold off their offlaner for their last pick. It's weird that High Ground actually banned the Timbersaw here. I think that whatever's going to fit this position, it will be like another initiator, because they don't want to rely on Void to be the single initiator. It's kind of hard against this lineup, and especially if Void gets like lassoed or something like that, it would be a major issue. And he will have to like build into a Linken's if he's the only initiator, because if he ever just gets caught out in a fight, they pretty much lose. So the last pick here ends up being a Clockwork, and then Viper picks come out. Last pick, Viper. So right now High Ground has a very scary laning stage. All of these heroes insanely powerful laning stage. Weaver has insane kill potential. Brewmaster not so much, but he's very hard to deal with. Has evasion, mischance, very annoying for these heroes that primarily do damage from right clicks. Like they don't have like any nukes or anything. They're just reliant on right clicks, except for like the Visage nuke. And of course like the Lina, but the Lina is not going to be involved in the Brewmaster's lane, because Viper of course will be mid. And just speed through this and get to the early game. So in the early game, it shows that they actually want to secure this bottom side of the map with the rune ward here for the Lina. I think they're afraid of ganks coming in from the side here from the Ogre, but we'll see that High Ground actually decided to go with an aggro lane, which I think is really smart. Actually, it's probably a bad decision, but because of how Reverse Heaven respond to it, it ends up being a good decision. The thing is, they have a really strong lane here with these three heroes, but they choose to TP out bottom and secure this instead of their safe lane. So like what a good team would do if I mean, I'm not gonna say this is not a good team, but like what like the top teams right now would do in this scenario is if they come out here, like they're already doing with the ogre, right? So the ogre comes out up over in the top lane, hides in the trees, and they could ward in this area. And because the AA and the Visage, I think the Void TP'd out or he walked out. Let me see. No, he walked out. Yeah, so since no one TP'd out top here, their safe lane isn't secure. So as a result, like the Radiant team could have wards. They decided to actually ward here because they expected Reverse Heaven to actually come out in full force in the top lane. Actually, who warded this? Was it just Brew? Oh, so it was just Ogre. Yeah, so what they could have done here on Radiant, which would have potentially won them this lane a lot harder than they do, end up winning, but they could come out here, place ward vision anywhere here, blocking a camp anywhere, and Dire would have no idea about it, and this would give them a huge advantage over the lane. They could like block the small camp. They can just get that small edge over the lane that will allow them to eke out an advantage, because I think this lane is very even, and any advantage like having a vision advantage, having a ward blocking the small camp will turn the tide. And the Weaver versus Clockwork matchup is pretty fine for the Weaver, and they're happy with actually just leaving him solo down the bottom lane here. As you see, Batrider makes rotation through mid. These wards are kind of late, but this ends up working out as this ward actually nets him a kill here. So I think AA caught a glimpse of it. They're also protecting their courier, it seems. And I mean, it looks dumb that he dies like this, but he actually had no vision of the Batrider on the high ground, and at this point it was too late. So he just decides to kill the ward, and if he ran immediately, he might have lived, but I think Bat still would have caught up to him, stacked up the sticky napalms, and the Viper ended up going Corrosive Skin, which meant that the A would have lived, but if the Viper just had Poison Attack, he would have died regardless if he walked up to get the ward or not. And the problem with the A doing this D-ward is he got the D-ward off, which is fine, right? But he fed first blood, which is a huge thing. Now Viper has a decent lead in the mid now, which is a problem. And as I said before, they didn't come out top to secure the lane, so they don't have any vision here. The problem is they don't have like a ward here. They can't place a ward here. It's too late because it'll just get dewarded. So they'll never have potential to have ward in this lane unless they just like sneak one out somehow, which I don't see them doing. And then now the top lane is under a lot of pressure. They still have a very strong tri lane, so they bring the Brewmaster really low, but he manages to barely survive and lose the Visage. And they do get a trade for it, I believe. Oh, they don't even get a trade. Yeah, so you saw how close that was. Just imagine if they had the vision advantage in this top lane, they had a ward somewhere in the lane, they can see exactly what is going on, and the A started directly top instead of trying to go mid here. And like going mid was like not the wrong call, so you got the D ward off, but for some reason the Batrider there, so the safer play was just for them to go all three top, secure this lane. Just from the start of the game, even TPing out, placing a ward, securing the top lane for the Void, because they don't know what could be up here. And even if it's just solo Brewmaster, that would be like the ideal scenario, right? They would just zone him out as 3. I'm getting Steam message right now. Now this top lane is having a huge problem, and I'm not even gonna watch mid too much as Lina goes down 1v1. That's unfortunate. I think Viper does win this matchup early on. Bottom lane is gonna be even pretty much. Clockwork actually does have kill potential into Weaver. If Weaver like messes up, goes in too deep and gets cogged, but like this is not going to be a winning matchup, and they're pretty much going to lose all 3 lanes now because of this. Rotation comes in from the Ogre, and this is huge death on the Lina. The problem is she just TP'd in, so this death will just guarantee that they lose the early game now. So in the first 3 minutes of the game is not over by far, but it's gonna get incredibly hard from this point onward. This hero is incredibly hard to deal with, and they are entirely reliant on their late game, which isn't bad. So we'll see how that plays out. But this is a huge death. This is really bad for the Lina. She mans up. She's winning this fight, but the Ogre was missing. How did he make his rotation all the way down here? Let's see. Oh, so he was really low, walked back to base, and he just TP'd out. Where did he TP to? Oh, so there was a ward spotting him out. He was smoked beforehand. He just didn't notice it. A has to TP back top. They want 3 heroes in this lane. They're very strong as 3 heroes. I think 3 heroes should have been here at the start. And now the Brewmaster, he didn't level Thunderclap. I mean, I think this is a fine build. He's going to farm up and have a pretty good time in this lane unless 3 heroes are up here. So you see the AATP top, no one can help the Lina, and even if they do come in to help the Lina, it was too late and they might die as well. This Batrider was here too. Really good rotations from high ground. And at this point, like, I actually like the draft coming out from Reverse Heaven. It's really strong. This 3 heroes incredibly strong in the laning stage. The problem is they messed up the pregame. Not anything major. As you saw, like, this first blood was pretty big, but it was just not securing the safe lane. Like, this Void could be really far ahead, but instead he's like the same level as the Brew, and I mean, you can see Brew is still having a hard time, but at this point they're having to commit 3 heroes, whereas if they just started off like this and maybe like they came in by surprise at level 1, because Ogre and Bat isn't that strong at level 1 actually. I mean, Ogre is really tanky, but he doesn't do much, right? He's a meat shield and he can like body block and has a slow, but he's a lot stronger when he's level 2, has the Bloodlust, so he can speed up 1 hero. And even later onward, like, what he does as a level 1 hero in this lane, like, he's not gonna save the Brew if he gets gone on by all these 3 heroes or anything like that at level 1. You can like try to block for him, but if they just go full force, they definitely can kill Brew, or they can kill whoever. They can even kill Ogre. They have that damage output. But things pan out okay now. It's not ideal, but as you see, their laning stage has been recovered. Again, they have really strong trial lane, so Brewmaster has to go jungle now, and supports are looking for action elsewhere. DDZ is looking to camp the Lina. They're making a good decision to send Lina into the jungle. They don't want to put her at risk of getting ganked, as the Batrider and Ogre is missing, and if they're not showing the map, she literally cannot be mid anymore because of what happened. Viper is also level 6. I mean, none of this is good, as the Lina is getting completely zoned out. He doesn't have a game to play, and it all really started off with the early games. As things turn out in Dota, like, pregame is extremely important, and games can be lost in the pregame for sure, depending on the lineups and things like that. But Lina's having a very hard time. You see, like, Clockwork actually does fine in this lane, so I'm completely fine with the decision of leaving Clock here in the bottom lane versus the Weaver alone, as he's not having a hard time, and he actually almost kills the Weaver there. But Lina again has no game. She TPs in mid again, which she can't really afford to do. She gets surprised by 3 heroes and just dead. Surprised she decided to complete that TP. That could have just been Visage dead, but now they're both gonna die unless Visage gets out. Visage will be dead as well. I mean, I just can just tell, like, this is how the game's gonna play out. Void will get farm, of course, but he could get a lot more farm here if the lane has started out well for him, because then Brew couldn't even show up at all. But now, like, Brew with the supports missing can go and annoy him, and Brew's actually really good here as he makes Void miss, and like Void's only damage source is his attack, so he can lane at this point even with the level disadvantage. Which is, I think the Brewmaster pick was really smart. Now it's all reliant on Clockwork to make the comeback plays. Gets a good play there mid. Gets 2 kills, but they lose Lina again. Lina literally doesn't have a game, and it all really started at level 1, right? AA went mid. Unfortunately, got caught out by the Batrider. They didn't expect the Batrider to be there, and then he gave first blood to the Viper, and then things were all downhill from there. He can't show up in the bottom lane either, because as I said, the Weaver is a really strong laner. Plus 1, he can kill anyone in lane, especially squishy heroes like the Lina. Lina was 4th pick, and I think they could have picked a better mid, potentially. I think Lina was a fine option, as they wanted some type of ranged hero, right? Or some type of hero that can do damage into the Chrono. But just the way they played out their lanes gave Lina a really hard time, and this is not even dissing the player or anything like that, because He can like be avoiding these deaths, but like his game is so hard right now. I think he could have canceled this TP here, and like going bottom obviously wasn't the greatest decision, but he just doesn't really have an idea how to play the game anymore because he's put in a really bad position. We're enter a pause. How long is this pause? What are they saying? Call him, go. I don't know what that means. Alright. Alright, we're back in the game. She's gonna die again. She gets out. Oh, never mind. That is a sad game for the Lina. Void even has to rotate now, which means that Brewmaster takes over the top lane. He can even start doing damage to the tower. Is that purgeable? It doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure it's purgeable. He actually gets himself stuck in the trees here. It's Quelling Blade though, so he's fine. Void makes his way back top, and they will get a kill on him with Chrono. They should. He gets out of here. This is insane. Alright. So Brewmaster goes down, but Viper literally can take all the towers he wants right now. And of course, he's a fairly slow tower pusher, but with the Dragon Lance, he slowly takes down the towers. There's Aquila as well. There's not much that Reverse Heaven can do in terms of defending it. They're only like building defenses, like Clockwork coming in and hookshotting, and then Lina dishing out the damage, or using Chrono, but Chrono is on cooldown right now. Void is also going Mask of Manus. I think this is I mean, Mask of Madness is pretty much a standard build on Void, but it's definitely not the right decision in this game. Like, he needs to be able to pressure lanes, and because of the Mask of Madness, like, he is resorted to jungling, which Lina needs to do, and because of how the early game played out, like, a lot of these heroes will already have a big advantage. You see the Brewmaster is, like, halfway to his Blink Dagger, the Viper is super fat, and if no one's pressuring out the lanes, they're going to slowly lose their map control, and once they lose all their towers, this lane will be, or this game will be very hard to play, as they don't have space in the lanes to farm their heroes anymore, and at that point they're just going to feel choked out, and the only plays they can go for is like 5-man smokes, 4-man smokes, Clockwork ganks, and these heroes are not necessarily easy to gank either. They have slippery hero like the Weaver, tanky hero like the Viper, and then Brewmaster can always turn around with his ultimate. Visage actually got a bunch of kills, so he actually has decent farm. He doesn't have level 6 yet, which is a power spike for him. And they throw everything down here into the Viper, which is pretty good. Weaver will probably lose his life here. Oh, gets out. Again, actually Brewmaster is not pressuring top. He shows up to the fight. I don't know about that. I think he should have just kept hitting top. But he'll be here now, and he'll try to take the bottom tower. Everyone on Reverse Heaven has to walk back to base. On the right side, though, Lina is getting some space created for her, and she took out the mid tower in the meantime. And this could have gone a lot better if Brew just stayed top, because this tower would have been taken down pretty much by the Brewmaster. But instead, he TP'd bottom to a fight that was a little bit too late, and he didn't get much done. Void went for a Iron Talon. He's trying to catch up in farm, but I think he needs to go like some type of lane pushing item. I mean, he went for the Aquila, but like Vlad's, I mean, it's kind of outdated build, but I actually think it's the better Void build, in the ability that it allows you to push out the lanes. And Mask of Madness is good for farming the jungle. It gives you more damage output, but like you look at like the heroes that he's playing against, like him having a Mask of Madness isn't going to help him in terms of killing them. They're fairly tanky, all of them, except for like the Weaver. And he's still reliant on his teammate to dish out the damage within his Chrono, so like the Mask of Madness isn't gonna like give him like solo kill potential or anything like that. It is the standard Void build, and most Voids are building it, even in the pro scene, so they are pressuring the top tower. The Void gets picked off by a smoke. Lina has had time to catch up now. Her net worth actually isn't looking that bad. Clockwork is owning though, has a Midas. He had more or less a free lane against the Weaver. Again, that matchup is not bad for him. And Reverse Heaven can go for smokes now without the Chrono. Batrider has a blink though. Holy crap, that's a farmed 4 position Batrider. And with the Batrider with blink the blink will allow him to get away. It's really good about Clockwork. Stops the Boo from getting his ult off, but he still gets it off. Saves himself from the Ice Blast, and I think they'll kill Familiar here. So how this game is going to look now is actually the Weaver went for Force Staff to save himself from Clockwork. That's interesting. And so back to what I was trying to say is this game is going to look like the Weaver pushing this lane, and then the Viper will run down lanes. Like Weaver will be off on his own for the most part. That's why he's like building an item, defensive item, to help himself out. And this is like probably one of the best items he can buy. Makes it so that he doesn't have to be afraid of Clockwork at all, and he can move around pretty aggressively. And the only thing that he has to really be worried about is the Chrono. But again, the Void can't kill him solo in the Chrono, as he's pretty under farm at this point. So it have to be Chrono and then other heroes missing as well. They have the option to go in aggressively, go for the gank there, even without the Brewmaster ultimate. I mean, Lina is super susceptible. Like even when she's in the jungle, they have wards everywhere. So if she gets spotted out, like smoke ganks can easily come for her, as they have the Batrider Blink Dagger already. They take it tier 2. The map is getting smaller for Reverse Heaven. So now at this point, like Lina is still trying to farm into a Bloodstone, but like at this point, I would say it's almost too late. What he's going to be able to do is farm Bloodstone. Sure, it's going to be nice. Cool item, but I can see him die a bunch of times and lose Bloodstone charges really quickly if he's not careful. Again, Batrider is a huge hero right now in this game. In terms of his pickup potential, he has so many plays available to him because of how the map looks with all these aggressive wards. Void has went back into jungling mode, and he doesn't even have the Mask of Madness yet. And the thing is, he won't be ever able to split push this game, and unless he goes for like a Linken's afterwards or something like that. But even then, like the Mask of Madness will hurt him, because then he won't be able to time leap away if he wants to use it to push out the lane. Lina's gonna get picked off again. And Void shows up to the fight, but it's a little bit too late again. Notice, keep in mind that he doesn't have damage for the Chrono, so he can Chrono the Weaver, but like Weaver actually doesn't even care, and instead he just even gets stumped in the air. I'd say this game is not over entirely, but it's almost impossible for Dire to win at this point, as their plays are so limited that they won't be able to do much. All they can rely on is good high ground defense, as they have the heroes that do so. They can 5-man around the map and look to abuse high ground being out of position. That's pretty much it. Like they can go back into the Midas and farm. Like they can still win for sure, but like in terms of having the game in their hands anymore, it's not. Whereas if they like, actually he's not gonna go for the Midas. Say for example, like the game could have played out differently, right? Void, say 2 supports start with him top. It would of course allow them to kill the Brew or zone him very hard. And either that or the support's about to show up to help the Brew out, which they did, but then at that point it was delayed, right? Because the A already went mid and died, and then went top, so they weren't there right at the start. Ideally, they were there before the game even started with wards, so they had idea of what was going on in the lane. And we see that their early warding definitely hurt them, because then they had no idea that the Batrider was here. They had 1 ward here, and that was it. They had no ward in this area. Ideally, like they actually like TP out and try to place this ward right away. This would have allowed them to see like the Ogre was chilling out in this area. I think they wouldn't have seen Batrider, but when they saw the Ogre top, I think that would have convinced them that there's probably an aggro lane or something, which might have meant that the A just starts top. That was his best play. The mid play, like that could have worked out. Let's say he didn't die there, right? But it still would have been worse than if he just started top and secured the lane for the Void. And it all led to what is going on now, where they don't have any control over the map, and they can just get picked off by Batrider left and right, as I think the Visage is about to die here. And now Void doesn't have a game, so keep in mind, like, let's say Void has a better start, he can go for, again, like the Vlads or whatever, he can push the lanes. This is what Mushi did in a series that Mineski played against Fnatic, I think it was, or TNC. I forgot what team it was, but I know Mushi played Void, and he was safe lane Void as well. went for the... I'll look for the game after this, actually. He went for the Vlads. He was able to pressure lanes really aggressively with his team and push your towers as well. The strength of the Void is his ability to just be very hard to kill, right? Let's say he gets the Vlads up. He's very tanky now, has extra armor, and he does more damage as well, of course. So it allows him to have all of that. Gives him great lane pressure, right? Because of course it gives the armor to the creeps as well. But of course he went for the Ring of Aquila, so it doesn't really synergize with Vlad's. But I mean, you can disassemble, or you can even build Helm of the Dom. I don't think Helm of the Dom is that bad of a build. I know BSJ built it in NA, and he's the only player to do it. I think he commented a lot on his stream as well, where he doesn't like Mask of Mana's Void, and it makes sense. I think in certain scenarios, he's like adamant against the Mask of Mana's Void, but I think that Mask of Mana's Void can fit in some teams' playstyles. He's really thinking like, the thing is, Void could also farm, and if he has Mask of Manus, he can stay off the map a lot more, which allows the enemy, or forces the enemy team to play a certain way. The problem with playing like a lane pressure Void is the enemy team can play around it, right? If they constantly see Void pushing out a lane, they can go for certain ganks because they know that he won't be able to be there immediately. But when he's off the map, he's farming in the jungle. They never really know where Void really is unless they have ward vision, and as a result, like, they can't go all out with their ganks as if Void was showing a lane pushing a tower, for example. So it's different playstyles, and I think in this game they definitely would have benefited from the Void being able to pressure towers, especially against these heroes. Like, they don't really have the best ganking potential onto him. Like, they have Lasso on the Bat, and that's pretty much it, right? But let's say Bat didn't have the good start that he did, because he ended up having a pretty good start. He wouldn't have that early of a blink, and then Void can get away with like pushing towers, and it puts pressure on the map, and that's a huge thing to have when they have Alina, who needs to play greedy and farm up her items. I don't really agree with the Bloodstone, but if she was gonna build a Bloodstone, that would be something that they need someone else making space, and they can't just have the clock. I mean, that's too much responsibility to put on the clock to get everything done. Like, they need the Void to do things as well, but since like Clockwork is the only playmaker, since Void's laning stage is bad, his item build is not playing to the strength of him playing as an aggressive lane pressure as well, it hurt them in all senses, as now they're pretty much behind on all their cores, and the only hero that's kind of doing well is Claw, but there's only so much he can do as a hero, and there's the reason why he isn't picked that often anymore as a offlaner. I feel like he does a lot more if he uses a forward position, because the hero actually doesn't end up needing that much farm to be useful, right? But I mean, created space there. The Void had to Chrono to get himself out, and with Chrono down, they can go for Roshan, which is what they'll do. And there's no way to contest this. Maybe Clockwork can try to steal, but he doesn't have TP. Lina is pushing bottom. She has her Bloodstone now, pretty delayed. She's not even confident of pushing this bottom tower. But they'll see Aegis still down. He's gonna move back, but he still has to be careful now. Like, Batrider could be here already, and he'll brightly back off. This is going for Ags, and his farm is actually not that bad. He's been involved in a couple of kills, and he's been farming a lot. Holy crap. Decent amount of losses on him, and he's just been like, pressuring with his birds, and he's getting farm here and there. But rotation comes out from the Viper, and they almost lose the clock. They don't. He managed to get the hook shot out, and at this point they can pressure high ground fairly easily. They have the Aegis and the Viper. He literally can just slow siege them, and there's not much they can do about it. They want to push out the side lane first, and they take the top tower. The map is entirely taken away now. Every tower dead, and this all goes down to tower defense now. As for Reverse Heaven, that's like their play. They have to execute their tower defense perfectly. Again, in Dota, like, the game plays out differently with all the little things that happen in the first 10 minutes. And I think that for a team to be in the best position, they want to maximize their impact in the first 10 minutes, because the first 10 minutes is where the game kind of plays out in a way that is predictable, right? Because you can kind of guess every hero's strength at level 1, whereas later on in the game, the items change up, the levels change up, and it's hard to gauge the hero's weaknesses and strength at that point in the game, because everyone, like, you don't know the enemy's net worth at all times. You can see what items they have, but you don't know, like, their full potential, right? Like, at any point, like, you can have a full courier or full item on the courier and can show up, catch you by surprise. But at level 1, like, you can predict, like, what the heroes are gonna have, what they're gonna be able to buy with their starting gold. I mean, it's only 600 gold, so you have an idea of how you can play. It's kind of like chess, where the starters or the openers are pretty much predetermined, I would say, where, I mean, all the top chess players kind of know how the early game will play out, and I think Dota will eventually get to that point, but right now it's definitely not like that, especially with more inexperienced teams, I mean, they don't read the early game properly, and I can see, like, a lot of teams just lose the game in the first 10 minutes where they don't even get to play. And that's not what differentiates the good teams from the bad teams either. I think the best teams in the world are teams that can even get past bad laning stages and then end up winning. That just is the better team at the end of the day. Like, we see that with, like, teams like EG, but I think there's no reason why you wouldn't try to eke out the most out of the first 10 minutes of the game as possible, especially the draft as well. That plays a major role, and I think it's really important that, especially for up and coming teams, is to put themselves in a position where they can perform their best, whether it's having, like, the ideal draft where they can really play it well in the early game and make sure that they can actually have a chance to play the game, right, instead of just outright losing before they even like the game even starts, pretty much, like losing in the pregame. That's always a bad feeling, because like, the game will still play out, but it's like you never really had a chance because what happened. And it's really important to realize, like, how can we lose the game before we even get to play, or before the game, the sound rings, or the horn sounds. But it's kind of what happened in this game. Not 100%, because there's a couple of plays that they made that definitely put themselves in such a bad position, but it all started in the early game. And we're going to turn another pause here. What's going on? Am I paused myself? This is definitely paused, right? Hold on. Alright, we're back. So they don't end up pushing high ground. I don't think they defended, though. Did they? No, they did. Hold on. Did I miss? Oh, what did I miss here? This is such a long pause. What is going on? I see the Viper dead. Alright, hold on. Screw this. So, alright, they go high ground. They do some YOLO. I don't know what, but high ground is held. They lose the Viper as Aegis as well. I mean, that's real big. And it shows, like, this draft is fairly strong. Like, they can defend high ground. I mean, that was a huge gold swing, actually. They only have a 5k net worth advantage now. Lina has done a great job of recovery, even though he's 2-10-3. Shows that he's a good player, made use of the space. Like, Void ended up creating space, and Clock made a lot of space as well, so Lina caught up again. Hurt, like, being able to take the mid tower when the fight was going on is huge. What happened? Alright. Loses Bloodstone charges there. Visage 1,000 gold away from Aghanim's. Void didn't end up going for the Mask of Madness. He has it completed. Now he has the Lincolns. Or he's going for the Lincolns. This is big. they're just picking on Lina. Poor Lina. And I mean, like, you can, like, for example, like, you look at their map vision here. I mean, it's not much, so he's not going to be able to see much on the map. As a result, he shows up to creep wave, dies twice in a row. First one was a deny, but second one they actually got the kill there. They got a counter kill onto Ogre, but who really cares? And it's all because Void had the jungle. Like, ideally, Lina stays off the map here and jungles, right? It's like Void is not threatening. Like, even if he's off the map, like, he needs so many heroes with him for him to get a kill with Chrono. Like, look here, like, Brewmaster will die. Alright, alright. Alright, A is a good hero. Strong hero. But I actually don't hate the Mask Bananas anymore, you know. After that, like, it's actually pretty solid. For that reason, because they have an A. I think he would be able to still do the same thing though with Helm of Dom or Lads. Well, actually, probably not the same thing. He wouldn't have enough damage output to kill the Brew like that. And take a fight, but there's no Chrono, so they lose the Void. Lina dies again. It's down to 4 Bloodstone charges. Like, this game is still not easy. Like, their only kill potential is with the Void Chrono, but since it's down, they don't have it. So then high ground can do whatever they want, and they're gonna go high ground. Viper does not give a single cares, and they will take top racks. This game's pretty much over at this point. They had one good high ground defense hold, but the game's still really difficult. Again, like, they had to just play as 5. I said it before, where, I mean, they can't, because of how the early game played out and the advantages that high ground got and with their draft, they can never play split anymore on the side of Reverse Heaven. They have to just play as 5 and just look to go together with Chrono or without Chrono at all times, and just run through the map together. And even then, they have to be very mindful of their positioning, because even if they're walking in a pack, if they're not tightly packed together, the Batrider can still pick someone off that moves a little bit too far from the crowd. They don't have any immediate response to him other than the Chrono and the Clockwork hook shot to stop the Bat from, like, drawing someone away and then bringing him to his Viper or Weaver. They're playing the game out, but, you know, like, things are grim. This game's super hard. Lina has no Bloodstone charges anymore, and it's not much more to say about the rest of this replay. Like, this game's pretty much lost. They're gonna get some kills here and there with their abilities, but it's very hard to play, especially with the next Roshan coming out. And Lina just doesn't have a game anymore. So, main thing in this replay is I saw the Lina, definitely potential for her to have a really hard time with the 4th pick. There's a lot of heroes that can be picked up last that will give her a hard time, and one of them, of course, turns out to be the Viper, lane dominator, and he had a good start as well with the first blood. High ground started out with a really aggressive hero combination, the Batrider Ogre. They can get a lot done in terms of, like, diving heroes down and playing aggressive in the early game. It's definitely something that Reverse Heaven had to watch out for. They picked decent heroes to do so, with the Clockwork and Void being pretty survivable when they hit the weakest hero, which is the Lina. And since the Void didn't have his lane secured in the top lane, the supports had to stay with him to make sure the Brew didn't give him too much trouble so he could actually farm. And because both supports had to stay with him for a little bit there, they just abused the Lina after they realized, like, they killed the AA top or forced him to walk back to base and they had to TP back top. And as soon as that happened, like, they just put all their pressure on the Lina because they knew the AA couldn't be there without having to walk over really slow. So at that point, they put full pressure onto the Lina because they knew that the supports couldn't be there, and things just snowballed out of control from that point. Lina died time after time again, went to, like, multiple lanes, went to bottom lane, died there too, and at that point, game just got difficult. Things that could have been changed so that this wouldn't happen is, you know, starting 3 heroes in the top lane immediately, and then starting the Void off with a decent enough start that he can be good with just one support, and then another support can go mid, either Visage or the A, and they can potentially turn around a lot of those ganks. Clockwork having a TP as well early on might have turned those ganks around, but we'll definitely see a different game play out if these 3 started in the top lane. And I can't say exactly what would happen, but it definitely would have looked different, and you can't say like that would have just straight up won them the game or not, but definitely can see and point out those things in the early game that definitely made the game play out a lot different than they would have expected. Because like Reverse Heaven's game plan here is, of course, just a combo. They wanted the Mask of Mana's Void, they got the AA, right? So they can just dump that chrono damage onto these heroes like the Brewmaster, like, and kill him before he can ult, kill the Weaver before he can ult, even take out pretty tanky heroes with the Viper. Is like with level 2A Blast, or like just even the Lina there, like they definitely can just take out any of these heroes, have the numbers advantage in the fight. And then Visage is a really strong hero, so if they can just pick off a hero or two with the chrono right away, like Visage will just clean up the rest of the fight easily. They have further chasing potential on the clock. The only susceptible hero is Alina, so this draft makes perfect sense. It's just that they got abused in the early game by Higher Ground, and they didn't have a chance to play their draft at all. And that's gonna be it for this replay analysis. I'll see you guys in the next one, and peace out.